So now introducing Thomas Keane, who's going to join us after this recorded interview for a bit of live Q&A. This is all about using AI, but not as we know it. So roll the film. Thank you.
I think that, I mean, that is something that I would, as part of this, definitely, reiterate is how much has changed and how, it's funny because in the games industry in particular, there's a desire to dismiss AI as the new crypto, right? And I get it. I mean, crypto sucked, and and the problem is that a lot of the AI bros are the same people as who are the techno bros. So I get the lineage, but that's not what this is. This is genuinely a step change technology. This is the first taste of what it feels like to talk to computers, and the first taste of what it feels like to start bringing true freedom into gaming. And it's funny because I mentioned the research briefly earlier, and the academic research is fascinating. And the reason it's fascinating, so first of all, it's 100% independent, conducted by the University of Bristol. We obviously provided the games and we provided the data of the games, but they did the playtest separately. They did all their questionnaires separately. They analyzed it separately and came to it. And one of the biggest problems we've got with the research is that it's too positive. And I know that sounds ridiculous. It's
Did notice.
yeah, it's too positive. It looks fake. It's like something like 95% of people who played it enjoyed it. 95% said it was rewarding. 75% said it gave them, meaningful choices and expressive freedom. That feels fake, but it isn't, and that's what's really interesting. Um, and we've actually got a bunch of backlash because of that, because people read that research and went, "Oh yeah, cool guys, yeah, nice one, bro." you know, but it really, it's really funny. It's nothing to do with us. When we presented it on stage at GDC, we'd only seen it 2 days before, so like, it's pretty
Brilliant.
interesting. And I
Yeah.
think the point of that is the potential here is going to surprise people because people think AI is slop, and AI is slop in the vast majority of cases. But when it's done well, its potential is going to surprise people. I think we're really reaching this kind of apex moment or collision moment where the current around AI is coming to a head, where you have these massive detractors, but you also have these really interesting green shoots of people going, hang on, there is a way to do this that is creatively legitimate if we have our heads screwed on right. And we kind of sit sort of perfectly poised to help navigate that conversation. So what's really interesting is there's obviously like various bits of information flying around about what players feel about AI, but they're very much like at a sort of a surface level, a sort of marketing survey level, where you're like, do you like AI? And players are like, fuck no. In the abstract, absolutely not. Because AI has become this well, it's become a symbol for low grade quality and the death of authorial control, and things that we're absolutely fighting against. Um, and I think that's the really interesting thing about the theory and the bogeyman in the theory versus the practice and what you can actually achieve creatively.
Are you finding it kind of enjoyable and in terms of creatively utilizing AI in this respect?
Yeah, I mean, from our side, we very much see generative AI and experiences that integrate generative AI at runtime to achieve new levels of dynamism. We very much see that as kind of the next revolution in storytelling. Fundamentally, there's kind of the potted history of storytelling is, as we see it, is in the beginning, before the 20th century, you had like the author that was like Lord, that they were the ultimate king of the story, and they just pushed it down to the audience, and the audience could accept it or not accept it, right? And that was their only power. And then obviously in like the 20th century, you had the author ceding some control to the audience, and actually admitting that the story was created in collaboration and in conflict with the audience. And this is something that is like philosophically true from a kind of a postmodern death of the author point of view, but also very literally true in terms of media becoming interactive. And so, like, the last 50 years have been defined by this really interesting ceding of control from the author to the audience, and the story being created in conflict between the two. And what we see now is the birth of a new revolution that will define the next 50 years. Because that conflict between those two forces we see is now becoming a triangle, where you've got the author, the audience, and the AI all in conflict for the story, right? And the experiences that do that well, we think are tremendously exciting. And when it's working well, what you have is very much the author at the top of that triangle acting as the puppet master, setting the whole thing in motion. And then the audience picks it up through role play and through play, and the AI is able to do something, very similar. And it's a pretty exciting new paradigm where stories are starting to feel and look very different from an audience experience perspective.
And when can I play Dead Meat? Because I'm dying
Well,
to play it. I'm dying
well,
to
yeah,
try it.
dead meat. I mean, this is a little early by maybe a week, but we're about to make an announcement, hopefully on dead meat, about what's going to happen to it. But it's got a big future. It'll be coming to, well, the plan is for it to come to market at the end of this year. Um, and it's a very exciting project because it's kind of our laboratory piece. Like all of our ideas about how this space can work, we put into that game and we stress test them and we explore what it looks like. And then a lot of the ideas suck, and then we kick them out. But then it's like this really interesting hotbed for experimentation and our creative expressiveness.
What's the premise of it, if you're able to say?
Yeah, yeah. So Dead Meat is a murder mystery interrogation game where you can ask the suspects absolutely anything, right? And it takes place in a kind of a dystopian future, um, and it's in a world that has been thoroughly burnt by hyper capitalization and technologization, if that's a word. And it's, what's really neat about Dead Meat, and I think what makes it really different is that when you talk to these characters, obviously you can say anything and blah blah blah. The whole AI NPC thing, right? You can get that external dialogue, but the really cool thing is in Dead Meat, you also see what's going on in their minds. So you get that much deeper perspective on these characters about what they're really feeling about the moment, what's really motivating them, what they actually want to bring to the conversation and what they want to get out of it. Um, and from our side, like creatively, that's been a big unlock because it's taken characters that feel like NPCs into characters that feel like, living, breathing entities that want to fuck with you, that are hurting deeply about something, that, all these different things you hope and expect from a character that actually often video games fail to achieve. And I think we are getting there with Dead Meat.
I mean, it's the ultimate, like, dramaturgical, to use a kind of
Yeah.
accurate dramaturgical storytelling kind of thing, isn't it? Is that the characters think one thing and say another. And I mean, it's the classic thing when I was kind of learning script writing some years ago, like, write the scene, but not don't be on the nose. And what the characters will say in dialogue is it's kind of you need to be thinking about subtext and all that sort of thing. So it's really
Yeah.
sounds really exciting.
Well, that's the whole Robert McKee thing, isn't it? The truth of the story, the competing desires, and I think that's what makes good characters. And on that, right, it's like we always say how people talk about AI as being the death of the writer, right? But from our side, we see it as the era of the writer. And it's the era of the writer because the thing that makes AI better, your competitive advantage over anyone else making things, is the quality of handwritten storytelling and the depth of characters that you as a human are putting into it. So the skill of the writer, the human hand of the writer, is more important than ever before. And we actually see that like this is their age. There's no less writing you have to do, and actually, the value of the written word is such that fundamentally, um, it's the quality of ideas that will make a difference. And that's not going to change. And AI is just a different delivery mechanism. And the written word in itself has lost its value. The thing that still matters is the quality of the ideas and the quality of the characterization and all that sort of stuff.
Can I ask you about your history and go backwards a little bit?
Please.
I mean, what's your first memory of kind of playing video games? And like which games really did you find inspiring as a younger Tom?
As a younger Tom, I mean, he was an idiot. So, but like. Yeah, what did I love? I mean, I think I wasn't really allowed video games growing up. So video games were sort of seen as this like kind of dirty thing. Screen time was seen as this kind of like dirty thing. And I think the result is that I've carried that forward in me, and weirdly, I sort of it makes me feel video games are quite punk, right? And I know no one else feels this. Everyone else like yeah, video games they're totally mainstream, whatever. But for me internally, I've internalized the idea that they're naughty, right? They're bad for you, and actually that's why I really love them. It's like punk music, it's like. Uh, So, yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing. I did obviously did play video games. I remember getting a Dreamcast for Christmas and it being like this, like I could not believe that this treasure chest had been opened up for me. I could not believe that I was suddenly allowed to do this, and it was being sanctioned in some way. So, yeah, I mean, the big game on that for me was Shenmue. And Shenmue is a really interesting game about, trying to simulate what it feels like to be in a living, breathing world and have freedom in that world. And not to over psychoanalyze it, but to some extent, the feeling I got in that game is some of the feelings that I'm trying to achieve in different ways today, which is the idea that the world is happening independently from you. It has a dynamic, it has an integrity, and you're just one player in it. And it's about how you enter that world and the changes you affect. But you aren't the overlord of this world. You are just a piece in it. And I think that's the really exciting dynamic that you can achieve with games, and also more with AI and simulation of worlds and characters.
Amazing. And what other kind of obviously you I think from what we've discussed and the games that what I picked up about your games, story is kind of really important to you. What kind of story games did also along the way have you really admired?
Yeah, I mean, story is the critical thing, for me. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love Elden Ring as much as the next person. I sunk over 100 hours into that game, and I'd do it again in a flash, right? But I think that what I'm really excited by is video games as a novel medium for telling stories and as an opportunity to really fuck up how stories are told and do it in a really interesting way. And for me, one of the really big references that I always come back to is Her Story by Sam Barlow, and it captures that thing that I was mentioning earlier about this dynamic between what the author is trying to say and what the audience wants to do with it. And I think it's a really nice balance where you've got, this authored content that is here and it exists in a non-linear way. And then you, the player, comes in and rifles through the database, rifles through, all of that richness and makes sense for yourself. And I think there's something about the agency of making sense of something yourself, knowing that there's something strong and integral and that stands up, but that you, as the player, have to come and navigate that is a really exciting thing for me. And to be a bit lost is really exciting. Yeah, I mean, Unknown Number is, Unknown Number is a voice controlled game based around telephone calls, right? And it's obviously, trying to put you in that weird position where what if you suddenly got an unknown number from someone who needs your help? And how far would you go down that rabbit hole in helping them, right? And it's kind of like this really interesting thin end of a wedge that pulls you into this conspiracy of stealing money from billionaires and raiding oil rigs and all that, right? And I really, beyond AI, as a game designer, my fascination is about how do you turn speech, natural language, role play, as me role playing, right? As a how do you turn that into a core mechanic, and what gameplay emerges from that? And Unknown Number was really a key part of that process, where it's like in that game you're not playing a character, you're playing yourself. You are speaking as yourself. You are literally the person on the end of a phone, right? And when that game was first made, it really was made with phones, right? The first version of Unknown Number was done with real phone calls. We used, as I said, we used Twilio, which is that um, that sort of automated phone call service that banks use. So literally the stuff that keeps you on hold and winds you up. Like, can we gamify that? you'd get real phone calls from real numbers, and you'd kind of, speak to people on the phone and use voice control to speak back and try and solve these puzzles and resolve this mystery. And yeah, I think it's got a similar. I mean, it's got a Her Story-esque-ness to it in the sense that it is pre-recorded and it is really confusing. Like one of my favorite things about it is in the game you have a a browser, right? And there's a lot of stuff that bleeds into the real world, and the browser looks like a fake browser, looks like a toy browser. But the trick is it's a real browser. And people and all the streamers who played it were just like, treating it like a toy browser and then be like, oh, hang on, I can visit YouTube? I can watch my own videos? I can like and this really interesting kind of like postmodern loop of like this game bleeding into their lives and them seeing themselves in this game and I would say that that little trick is really interesting. The way you're not sure where the game is and where you are, and that's true from you speaking and it being you. It's true from the browser being in the game but also being real. It's true from spoiler here, but you do have to start using real telephones to complete the game. Trying to break out those confines and yeah, just redefine where that play happens, right? Um, I mean, just reflecting on it earlier. And please shut me up if I'm just rambling too much. But
No, it's all good. It's
um,
all good.
just reflecting on the thing you had said earlier about what games really influence me, it's like I'll be totally honest. The thing that I'm more influenced by anything else, and have been over the last 5 years, is Dungeons and Dragons. And that's not because I particularly like the 5e system, and it's not because I particularly think, oh, the way they've got it is so perfect, but it's because it's this really weird, fluid sandbox where you're constantly having to design the game and invent the game with yourself as a dungeon master, with your players as not just players, but also co-authors. And that dynamic, that essence of the tabletop that is fluid and expressive, is actually one of the parts I really want to try and bring into digital games. Because actually I think on the tabletop, you have real choices. You can really do anything as long as you can pull it off, as long as you can get the right dice roll. Like the possibilities are endless. But in video games, you very rarely have real choices. We pretend to players that they have choices, and it's the role of game designers to make players feel like they have real choices. And I think that like pulling in some of that true freedom is going to be one of the journeys that we as game makers, as experience makers, go on over the next 50 years. How do we pull that freedom into crafted digital experiences? And I think that's yeah, a core part of what we're trying to do. Like we always say, AI, anything bad you might say about AI, we certainly agree with you. Like there's nothing you can say bad about AI that wouldn't be like, yeah, 100%. That's the truth. And the difference is that we actually feel that we have a responsibility to do something about that. We feel there's a responsibility to try and close the gap because AI is here. There is no putting the genie back in the bottle. And the danger is that there are people in certain boardrooms who are going, oh, I could use this to cut down my workforce. Oh, I could use this to kick out the writer, or I could use this to whatever, like sinister stuff. But actually, what we need to do as creative people and as the creative community is we need to lean in and show how we are still essential, if not more essential, in the age of AI, and how AI isn't a form to eradicate us, it's actually a force that we can use to tell better and more interesting stories going forward. And so we think there's sort of like an ethical imperative to acknowledge everything that sucks about AI, but at the same time to lean in and seize the conversation and establish what we believe is good, establish what we think is creatively viable and what we think is ethically important as well.
Yeah. What, I mean, do you have like, and it was there a kind of turning point with AI where you felt, or you did something with an LLM, or, for example, an LLM, and you realize actually this kind of opens up things like massively. Was there a particular point or example?
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing. Well, there's two answers. One is it continually blows my mind even today. So that's one thing, and I'm constantly shocked by what is achievable, even on local models, right? Um, but I think broadly speaking, so Meaning Machine is a co-founded by myself and this guy Ben Ackland, who's more on the technical side. And the thing is we've both been in this space, this natural language gameplay space for 7, 8 years, right? And so we've been wrangling. You mentioned unknown number. Unknown number is using hideous, out of date, local voice control and voice recognition technology. Really old fashioned stuff, right? That sure was state of the art once, but always sucked, right? It was always bad. And then it was the same with conversational AI and so on and so forth. So we've had this journey of picking up these technologies and assuming that these technologies are rubbish because they always are. Voice recognition sucks. Conversational AI sucks. And so when LLMs hit on the scene, what, 2022, end of 2022, whatever it was, when it started being the real moment, we approached that in the same way. We approached that technology going, okay, yeah, sure, there's huge promise here, but like every other natural language piece of technology, it also sucks. And it's our job as technologists and creators to work out where it sucks and how to bridge the gap between the suckiness and the potential. So even though we are like AI advocates, right? We are AI advocates from the point of skepticism. We basically believe there's massive potential here, but there's also massive weaknesses here that need to now be overcome both technologically and creatively. And I think what's cool about Meaning Machine, I think, is we're some of the only people to have that nuanced viewpoint of it's bad, but oh my God, it could be amazing if we do X, Y, Z. Lots of established IP is afraid of AI because they're afraid of what it might do and the fact that it's not in the can, right? And I think that's it's a fair challenge and not a fair challenge. And the reason it is a fair challenge is because I think the way that people tend to use AI is uh, not in a very good way, right? So the standard model for directing AI is you write a massive prompt, huge prompt. You just whack it all in. You go massive DM, dungeon master, write the whole lore, stick it in the model, and you also fine tune that model with tone of voice and various different things, right? So you got this prompt it, fine tune it, and then you pray, right? You pray that it's going to do something good for you and it's going to reflect what you want to achieve, right? It's that literally. It's the we talk about praying to the LLM gods, like please make a good story for me, and that paradigm is fundamentally broken. It's fundamentally broken. You cannot trust an AI to tell a good story for you because it won't. Because fundamentally, what happens when you do that pipeline is you press play, dunk, and then it just does its thing. Just does its thing. It just monotonously on rails. It's just repeating the same instruction set again and again and again, right? Um, Or, even worse, sometimes and totally randomly, it will come off that thing and it will be a freaking train wreck, right? It will dump massive spoilers. It will start, spouting fascist nonsense, like whatever, right? It's chaos. So this prompt fine-tune pipeline is broken, which is why one of the things we do at Meaning Machine is, we create a totally different way of thinking about it, a new paradigm, which is we call the bully pipeline. And the bully pipeline is about getting rid of that massive prompt and instead creating lots of handcrafted fragments of handcrafted moments, ideas, bits of dialogue, bits of story beats, set pieces, the whole thing, right? And then dynamically at runtime selecting all the right ingredients and then compiling them into what we call a bully brief, a very short set of instructions and knowledge that is perfect for that moment and served at the right time, and then colliding it with the model and forcing the model to operate off that instruction set. And so what you
That's
get,
a moment in the story.
sorry,
Is that at a given moment in the story or the user experience, or is that
at,
part of your development?
at every turn we're doing it. At every turn
Right.
during play, the model is not just spouting; it is being given a bully brief, which is about guiding the response in that moment. And so what that means is that the author can control what is being said at what moments. And as based on game state, based on your story intention, based on these things, you control what kind of fragments are being surfaced. And so it becomes a very interesting way of building a story and building an experience, where ultimately the AI isn't some freeform agent that you're hoping will tell a good story for you. It's ultimately the engine by which you can dynamically supply emergent versions of your own stories. And coming
That's
back to
very
this,
systems thinking.
yeah,
That's
right.
great.
And coming back to the safety point, right? The reason it's safer is because at every turn of the conversation, the AI is being retold, this is the point, this is the thing you're doing, and this is what you know. And that means that you don't get this weird thing where it sort of drifts and it becomes, I don't know, like Darth Vader or whatever. It doesn't drift into this weird land where you started telling the story here and it ends up somewhere over here. The actual model is we're interjecting constantly, constantly controlling and you say bullying the AI to do what we want it to do. Right? I think the way we always see it is it's like where AI is now or where it was a year ago even is good enough. It's powerful enough to power the next 50 years of creative innovation, right? We don't need it to
Totally.
be any
Yeah.
better. We don't need it to be any better. Now, big tech is in this arms race, right? It's in this arms race to get to get bigger, better, more commercial. Like it's almost irrelevant now to us. Like we're going smaller. We're trying to do more on device with smaller models. And the big gap for us is not, oh, we need a better model. Models are kind of irrelevant now. We've got the models. We need to get better at controlling the ones we've got. So I totally hear you, and I think that there is this weird thing that, yeah, like yeah, when ChatGPT came out, it felt like lightning in a bottle. You know,
Yeah.
it was like, what on earth is this? You know, and then it's just increasingly becoming a tone that is it's this, and it's like becoming a watchdog, and it's becoming it's had the edges knocked off it for sure. But that's them as a provider, right? What we're talking about here
Yeah.
is like this fundamental technology of you know very very intelligent dice rolls around language. That's what we're talking about, and that's the most exciting thing. And we can use tiny models and achieve great things.
Yeah. So yeah, do you, I mean, just whether this is commercially sensitive or not, I can always chop it out of the edit for the thing. But so are you running on APIs or do you have your own sort of LLM models or kind of engines?
Yeah, so our whole system is like agnostic to models. So our system works with tiny models on device. It works with massive models in the cloud. And really, what we do is we basically try to build a layer on top that is robust enough to get creative expressiveness out of any model at any end of that spectrum, right? And our projects vary across that scale. Like sometimes it is good to use a big model. Sometimes a big model makes sense. Sometimes a big model is going to bankrupt you, and it makes absolutely no sense. And so really there's just this stretch and it's very much about working out what is the requirement for the creative use case and largely the requirement for how much is being created, what type of content needs to be created, and how is it going to be distributed. And understanding that kind of Venn diagram is how you can make intelligent decisions. I mean, obviously, the smaller you go, the more the bully system becomes essential because you stop asking the model to be intelligent and you start forcing the model to be intelligent according to our definitions of intelligent.
I was watching like a documentary about Sly Stone, the American musician, and he talked about drum machines and he made a song. You probably know the song "Family." It's a Family Affair, which has this kind of fucked up bossa nova rhythm on a very cheap sounding drum machine. And he talks about, the way that he made that work was he had to use his human instinct to break the machine in order to get something soulful back from it. And it's very similar to what you're saying, to my mind.
Yeah, I mean, meaning machine, right? Like the future, whether we like it or not, is going to be a future run by machines, right? And so everything we do is about trying to put that human meaning back into the machine. Right. That's the big vision here is human meaning back into the machine, human meaning in an era where machines are threatening to take over. Right. And the answer isn't to go, well, we don't want to be part of it. We don't want to be part of it. We can't change the context. The answer is actually to work out how we can insert ourselves into that context.
Indeed, indeed. Brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Tom. Really, really good fun to speak with you and very entertaining and insightful. So I couldn't ask for more, really.
Brilliant. Well, hopefully it was useful and yeah, a real pleasure to talk and always fun to chat about this sort of stuff.
And welcome back. And I'd like to introduce Tom live in the flesh now, who's going to come on the call. Hi, Tom.
Hi, live in the flesh indeed. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Yeah, really good, really good.
Cool. So I think you were just back from GDC, a little bit jet lagged and quite hyped when we recorded that interview. But it was a brilliant conversation, and thank you for your involvement in Mac. And yeah, we've got some questions for you if you're ready.
Yeah, please, please.
Splendid. So the first one is around the new game Dead Meat, which isn't quite out yet, I'm aware of. But it's about how do you see the mind reading mechanics in Dead Meat? Is it mainly a narrative tool, or was it a necessity to mold the innovative and almost limitless player freedom you achieved via AI? So that's a pretty interesting question.
Yeah, that's super interesting. Um, well, I guess to answer it, I should probably do a tiny bit of a go back in time and to how it started. So, a version of the mind reader mechanic was the very first idea we had for Dead Meat because I think I guess there's a lot of different interrogation games and really, how do you make an interrogation game feel deep and interesting and actually give you some stuff to hook into? And I think our observation really was that one of the problems with interrogation is that people are obfuscating and hiding the truth, right? That's actually like the fundamental reason actually interrogating someone when it's not in a movie, right, is actually quite a frustrating process because you've just got to keep banging your head against the suspect and trying different strategies until you get something good. And so we were like, how do we make sure that that's interesting on a turn by turn basis? And this was when we were back when we were experimenting with the game way before LLMs existed and when we were looking for like NLP answers. And initially, the idea was around we should highlight lies in the dialogue, and then you should be able to click on those lies, and you'd get snippets of the truth underneath, right? And that was the initial thought. Um, and then when we started building the demo, we basically, we sort of thought, well, actually, this is so the dialogue at the time we were so blown away by what an LLM could do. It was the early days, right? It was that really crazy world where it was like, oh, like what these things can talk. We didn't have any of the blinkers around some of the AIisms and the tropes and all that sort of stuff. We were like, oh, this it's really fluid, and actually wouldn't it be really interesting to just basically pair the two together, almost Disco Elysium style, where you have the external dialogue being supported by internal monologue, and having that tension between the two became actually the key thing we were exploring. The really interesting thing that the question touches on, though, is so yes, everything I've just said is about it being a narrative device or a way of creating depth around a character. And I think it's one of the most successful aspects of Dead Meat in terms of actually creating depth and feeling like you're talking to a real person. But actually, beyond that, to your point, or to the question's point rather, it is becoming, as we move towards a scalable solution, as we go on device and as we go to smaller models, right, in general, and we define what that exact solution looks like. What we're finding is the internal monologue is actually providing exactly what you're saying, which is the constrained blueprint by which external dialogue can base itself on. So that when you're generating external dialogue, it has something to base itself on, like it has a pattern and it has a strategy defined by the suspect. And that creates a really interesting coherence, even when you're using smaller models.
Cool. Excellent. And on to the next one. To what extent do you need to fork the narrative or give the impression experience of interaction sufficient to give the player and the audience a good time?
I guess fork the narrative means in terms of give different outcomes, I
Yeah,
suppose.
and different routes through the story, I guess. I mean, it's the kind of eternal open world versus on rails, and now with AI, something else, I guess, completely different.
Yeah, I mean, Dead Meat is a strange one because in a way, Dead Meat it has some forks, but fundamentally it plays a bit more like a Case of the Golden Idol or a Rise of the Golden Idol, where it's like you've got you've got I guess a narrative set up to explore, and then you complete the game by filling in the form, right? And actually, however you uncover that information is kind of up to you. And I guess that's a fork of sorts. But I think, zooming out and looking at some of our other work, I mean, we're very interested in forks and branching narratives, and in particular, there's one project we're working on which is with a very exciting IP, which is about trying to reinvent what the adventure game feels like, really. Um, and one of the problems with adventure games, right, is that you're just trying to guess the answer in the designer's head, right? You're trying to go, what do they want me to say? And like, if I choose this option, where they're going to take it? Dynamic between player and designer, where the player's trying to guess either what the designer wants you to do or what the designer will do for you if you make X choice. And that's a slightly busted setup. And so where we're moving towards is a model whereby the designer creates the problem, but actually the system enables the player to have a lot of freedom in how they solve that problem. And then for basically to flex around that. And what's really cool about that is it starts feeling a bit more like a Minecraft, or but for narrative, right? It starts feeling more like an adventure sandbox or a world of adventure or something, rather than this like predefined dialogue tree.
Interesting. I'm struggling a little bit to sort of understand that. Are you able to expand it a little bit in terms of what that kind of looks like for a player?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, just let's take a really silly example, right? Let's say that you have an objective, which is to get into a room, right? And like in the olden days, it would be like, well, you need the key, or you need to kill the guard, or you need to whatever. And that's fine, but isn't it a shame that you can't seduce the guard, take them on a date, get them drunk, and and make them sleep in on a hangover so you can go through the door, right? Now it's the same outcome. The designer said you got to get through the door, but the flexibility of how you get through the door is opened up essentially.
Radically expanded. And is
Radically
that through
expanded.
AI or
Yeah,
just
so
just a new kind of methodology?
it's enabled by AI. So it's, the way we see this kind of way of working is that we give, and this is not a dead meat game. I should be really clear. This is a different type of game, right? This is a kind of adventure game with a world you can explore. The key thing is you give the player ingredients, right? And you don't let infinite ingredients exist, but you go, here is some sleeping pills, right? And here is a dish of food, and here is, whatever. And those are two different ingredients, but there might be loads of others. There might be a ornamental sword on the wall, or there might be I don't know, a loose floorboard or whatever it is, right? And they're defined ingredients by the author, and they're put there because they're very interesting in the way they connect.
Yeah,
And you go, okay, the player is free to put the sleeping pills in the ingredients, or they're free to do something else with the sleeping pills, or they're free to do something else with the ingredients, and actually it's about making a nice meal and making someone like you or whatever. But it's like that balance between author-defined toys, but then allowing the player to play with those toys in their own way.
gotcha. Brilliant. Excellent. Well, I'm afraid that's all we've got time for. I mean, we do have a couple more questions that have come through. I don't know if you might be up for answering those via email, and we'll
Yeah,
stick
of
them
course.
on the site sort of to follow on. That would be within our kind of ethos at the Modern Audience Conference. But thank you so much, Thomas. Really good to see you again. Really enjoyed our chat, and I think everybody's got a lot from that today. And we're going to crack on. We're going to roll with Rachel Hamilton's film. So catch up soon, Thomas.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Goodbye.